But what do you know? It seems like we're currently ongoing with another year, and the PlayStation 3 is still very much enjoyable. This needs to be said before this begins because it is 100% the most important note of however long this is. So basically what happened was, right after I was finished recording all of the footage for this, there was a firmware update for the PlayStation 3, 4.92 to be exact, just the morning after I was done doing everything. Which, what? Why am I saying this is because this is being filmed on the 4.91 firmware on custom firmware. This is being done on a jailbroken system, and why am I continuing to bring this up? Well, it's because I was able to go back. I sound like a crocodile trying to swallow a popsicle or something. It's because I've been sick for the last 2 weeks. The PlayStation 3 Store is still very much active. Now, how well it functions is a different story. I was actually able to somehow get access. I say somehow because usually when I try to do something, it always goes terribly wrong. But I was actually able to get the legacy PlayStation 3 Store, the old PlayStation 3 Store, the much better PlayStation 3 Store. Now, there are a couple of ways I think you can actually do this. The way I did it was having a jailbroken system. You just have to do a couple of steps to get to the process. Or I even saw somewhere that you could even possibly have like a specific older game and then go to like the downloadable content and it will take you to the older PlayStation 3 Store. It seems like if you want to be able to use the old one consistently, it would be the better option to have a jailbroken system and then just it's just there. Probably should have said this at the very beginning. I think I planned to. I'm just a complete idiot and didn't. Just a lunatic over here and not really saying anything in order, which I should be. If you want to be able to actually get access to the PlayStation 3 Store, I already think I said this part, you have to have a jailbroken system to do it the way I did. And you have to actually turn the QA flags on, which I didn't even know what the hell that meant, to be honest with you. That is something that I was confused about. But there is a way you can, if you're having problems doing it, there might be a couple ways you can do it, but the way I did it is if you go on the Brewology website and you find this specific QA toggle, all you gotta do is you download it. There's like a warning or everything too, so make sure you read everything that you probably want to read. You just basically download it on your PC or laptop or whatever, throw the flash drive in, put the flash drive into the PlayStation 3, and then just download it from the menu. You can actually check to see if it is enabled, because if you have to make sure that it is enabled, and then you have to put this specific code in, and then you can actually access this menu where you can go to set this clock. And if you turn back the clock to a time before 2012, then you can actually get access to the older PlayStation 3 Store. And then the good thing about that is it seems like every time you turn on the PlayStation 3 from that point and you still have the QA flags enabled, it will open up the old PlayStation 3 Store. You don't have to worry about the new one ever again. I was very surprised that this actually works still very much well. Like, this works better than the newest PlayStation 3 Store. Now, that's obviously because it's kind of just been sitting around rotting forever now. Like, the newest PlayStation 3 Store is just, it's basically just slowly dying. It's just sitting there at this point. Nothing's happening to it in a way where Sony, like, cares or something. It's just waiting around rotting in the grass. That's kind of why it functions like absolute horse manure and everything, but the old one functions unbelievably well. Like, I'm talking, it is not even night and day. It is like early morning, sun rising to the night where no stars are in the sky. That's how much different it is for how much better the old one actually functions. I don't know if it really makes a lot of sense why this is the case and everything, but that's kind of how it is. And probably actually going on the older one made me actually want to use the store more, because I went back and did this last year to see if it was working well. Not using the old one or anything, I just went on the new one and it was just like, okay, get me off this. It was not really fun to use or anything because it functions so terribly. It's just, you don't even want to spend more than 5 seconds on it. It just makes you angry. It's almost like trying to take a shower in the dishwasher. Everything that happened really didn't make any sense for why it was working much better on the old one, but that was the case. Now, of course, if you want an actual custom firmware system, you need an earlier edition original PlayStation 3. or you need a PlayStation 3 Slim. The earlier editions, there's actually a list you can find online which one can actually have custom firmware on it, and then the Super Slims can have the pen. Now, of course, the old system isn't completely perfect. The what? That's not right. The old store is not perfect. Wouldn't make any sense, actually, if it just worked completely 100%. Like, sometimes the images don't show up when you try to go to a specific section or something. It just shows, like, the PlayStation 3 buttons on the controller. So it's not like that's a big deal or something. It's just, it would look nicer and it would be much more pleasant to look at if it actually had all the artwork still on it. You might even be able to get that somehow. I was starting to feel like the longer I used it, sometimes things were starting to load in more. So if I was sitting around waiting for something to download or something, you went back and then an image was there that wasn't at first. So maybe if you sat around and waited, maybe some of the images and artwork would load. Not only is the design a million times better than the new one, it is unbelievably more fast. There is really not a glitchy or laggy anything. It is perfect almost. It might function as well as the PlayStation 5 Store. That's how fast it goes. And not only does it just run very well and nothing is really annoying with it, where you try to load a section or you're scrolling down and it's bugging the hell out of you or something. It's just much more user-friendly than the new one is. Everything is easier to access. It's way more straightforward. The filters actually work on it, it seems like. The new one, sometimes you try to filter it to make it so it's like PlayStation 3 games only, or you go to another filter and everything is just either the same or it's just nothing what you're looking for. There's just a very straightforward list where you get to see everything that's available. I was testing to see, obviously, if things were actually working, if you could download things and they would still function well and actually download to the system. There was a couple of demos I tried to download and they wouldn't go onto the system. It just wouldn't download for some reason. I don't know why it was. Like, it was probably more random than finding a plate of spaghetti in the basement bathroom. Certain things would download right away, and then some things wouldn't at all. Is that a store problem, or am I doing something wrong over here? After using this for a good amount of time, like, I didn't want to get off of this. I was just scrolling through the old store for maybe almost 2 hours. I didn't plan on sitting here for 2 hours trying to use it or something. I was just trying to go on for maybe even a couple of minutes. It was kind of one of those situations where you get yourself into something and you think you're sitting there for maybe 20 minutes and then it ends up being 2 hours. Really, the most interesting part about this is I didn't even think this... That's spit into the mic. The plan was to go on the new store and see if it was working less or better. Doubt it would be better. What's the word I'm trying to say? I'm trying to say a word that's like bad or something. If it was working way worse than it was last year when I used it, because last year it was very bad. It seemed to be working the same. And then somehow I found out that you can still get access to the old PlayStation 3 store, and it is amazing. Why is it that it seems like every time you do something related to the PlayStation 3, the further you go back in time, it gets better? Usually it's the opposite. When you do, or maybe probably not actually, but sometimes that is the case where everything that's newer is better. But this, even like, I don't know if it's just me, but I honestly liked the old PlayStation 3 logo better too. Like when they had the floating baby commercial and everything, and the Rubik's Cube, and this creepy guy whispering in your ear, and just didn't even know what the hell was going on. Saw this like cell processor chip. You didn't even know what the hell they were talking about. You were just this young person sitting in front of the television seeing this thing, and then the baby starts crying. It's like, what the hell is going on? This is like a horror movie or something, but it's just so intriguing to see. The thing about the new store is you don't ever think it could probably get any worse than it already was the last time you used it. I don't know if it ever gets worse or anything. It seems like it does every time you use it. I honestly thought it was like my internet or something when I used it again for the first time last year. I was just thinking, oh, okay, well, my internet is completely terrible. This is probably one of the worst functioning stores I've ever used. It's probably not an exaggeration saying that. It is terrible. yes, you can still download things from this and use it. You can't like put a credit card on it or anything. You just have to get PlayStation points and put it on your account somehow other than using a credit card. But I don't want to spend $70 on something that I could get for $10 or something at most. So it's just a lot of things maybe you probably already have anyway. Like I noticed some of the Call of Duty variations were very expensive. The damn store functions like I'm starting up my mother's Windows 98 ass computer at the top of the staircase. Damn thing should have like a typewriter attached to it. I feel like I'm opening a RuneScape browser for the first time. I think it's just a miracle, and we should probably just be happy that it does still work, because yes, you can get things on this that might not be overpriced. Like there are things, I think like The Last of Us isn't something that is, or at least the last time I checked, it wasn't something where that was insanely overpriced or something, but then certain things are. So there's just kind of a mix of things that are not that overpriced and some things that might actually not be that bad. Or was that, did I say the same thing, just a different way? If you want to compare it to the old one, there's really nothing I could say where the newest PlayStation 3 store has anything better than the old one. It looks worse. It runs way worse. Filters barely work on it. It functions terribly. There's like multiple of the same sections. You use the old one, and it does seem like sometimes there's more things to do on it rather than just scrolling through this large-ass list. I haven't seen a store function this smooth since I went to Chick-fil-A on a Friday evening. It is amazing. It's very impressive that PlayStation 3 had such a legacy run from basically, it seems, I keep saying it seems like, stop saying it seems like, from late 2006 to probably, when did they make like the logo change? 2009, 2010, around that time or something? It's almost one of those things where you're sitting around a campfire with a bunch of random ass people one day and you're just like, hey man, PlayStation 3 in 07. I don't think that made any sense. I think one of the most important lessons you can learn from everything sometimes is that just because something is new does not make it better. That's what I learned, is that using the old legacy PlayStation 3 store again makes me never want to use the PlayStation 3 store, the current one, as long as I live, to be honest with you. Now again, so again was probably not necessary in that sense, but we honestly have no idea for the most part if or when the PlayStation 3 store will shut down for good. There has been a couple of occasions in the last, or I think only one really, but in the last couple of years there was a little bit of a worry that Sony would shut down the store. Why bother taking it away at this point? For the love of Christ, this is almost 20 years after this. This is 2025 now. This is not 2015 or something. This is something where it's so damn old, why even bother messing around with it at this point? Just leave it the hell the way it is. People are just having fun. PlayStation 3 is still awesome in 2025. In fact, I'm actually trying to do something again on the PlayStation 3 that has to do with something that is kind of old. Again, with this whole 4.92 firmware update, everything's a little bit weird and confusing at the moment. There's really nothing I can think of that is just unpleasant with this system. I feel like this might be aging the best out of a lot of consoles. You know, there's a lot of great things and there's a lot of great consoles where you can do a lot of things in the jailbreaking scene. There's probably a couple that are probably up there too, but PlayStation 3 is definitely towards the top of the list for consoles where it is just completely incredible for what you can do with it if it is jailbroken. If you have custom firmware, or if you just have the hen downloaded on the Super Slim, there is an option to be able to get to the PlayStation 3 store again. The great one, not the Rock, the PlayStation 3 store. Because that is what this is. It is the great one. I wanted to really find out how much better, or just how well the legacy PlayStation 3 store functioned and how much that really had, how many items were on it, if everything was the same in terms of how many things were on the old one compared to the new one. If you were to tell me right now, like you went up to my ugly, disgusting face and said, hey man, What do you think it's going to be like if you use the old PlayStation 3 Store compared to the new one? You think it'd be the opposite? You think the old one would work terribly and the new one would work better? That's not the case. And everything else is better on it. I think I said that 10 damn times. So to be able to go back and see this again before it does shut down is something that I feel like is one of those things that needed to be done in life. You want to go back and do things before you probably fall dead. Thank you to everybody who decided to sit down and, or maybe you're standing, I don't know, maybe you're standing in the kitchen making a steak. I know I haven't posted in the last couple weeks, but I have been very, very ill. I was barely able to get off my couch, and I mean that. This is probably the most sick I've ever been in my life, actually. Usually when I'm sick, I just continue to function. I just feel terrible when I do it. But this time it was bad. It was getting to the point where I was starting to think, this might be the end, man. This could be it. This might be the last... The what? I'm getting off track, but the point of that was just to say thank you for being here. And thank you to everybody who has supported this channel. I was gonna say something in terms of